line. We'll get started in just a minute here. Just want to make sure you guys could tune in. All right. Okay. Well, hello. My name is Casey Woodward. I grew up an athlete. I played all the sports, but running was my passion. By high school, I was undefeated and went on to win state for 2 championships in different races. And I never struggled with my weight or my health ever growing up. It was never an issue. I got married at 18, and we moved right away to the state of Washington, where my husband was stationed in the Navy. And after a few long deployments, the stress of that life was really getting to me, and I didn't have any diagnosed condition at the time, but I just had a lot of like symptoms and issues and things that were happening. And so I'd go to the doctor and they'd say, oh, well, we're not really sure what's going on, but you know, you're young, you're healthy, just don't stress. And I didn't really realize at that time at all how stress played a role in your health. So by age 20, my husband was out of the Navy. We moved back to Oregon to be with our family. Yeah, come on in, find a seat anywhere. And I started having some funny symptoms, go to the doctor, and I find out that I'm pregnant. So that was actually really exciting. We were like, wow, and not planned, but this is cool. So I was a little bit concerned because for me, I knew I had been on the birth control pill, and I was like, oh gosh, like how did that happen? And is the baby gonna be okay? Because you think about all those things when, you know, you've gotten pregnant unplanned. So I go to the doctor, and everything was going fine for all of my appointments. By my 4th month, I went in to have my ultrasound, and I was so excited, as most first-time pregnant people are. And I got in there, and they said, oh, something's wrong. And he kept like looking, and long story short, they're like, well, there's no heartbeat. We don't know what happened, but like the baby's not alive anymore. And so that was a really hard thing to handle. So I went through a very difficult miscarriage. And after that, I continued to have just strange health things happen. And I'm like, I'm not okay. I didn't know what was wrong. I just knew I wasn't okay. I ended up joining a gym in Roseburg. At the time, I was working at Oregon First Credit Union over on Harvard. And I joined a gym with one of my coworkers, and we were going every like 5 days a week. And it got to where like I could only walk on the treadmill like holding on, because I felt like I was just gonna like pass out. And I was like, what is going on with me? It just was so bizarre. And so after like continually feeling like something's not right, I go to urgent care. And I said, I'm exhausted. I can't even work out anymore. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And so they asked me a bunch of questions and didn't really have any conclusions. And I was like, well, are you gonna do like a blood test, or like what are you testing here? Oh, we could do a blood test. So they do a blood test and come back. Well, we see nothing wrong with your blood. I think you're just too stressed out. Maybe you need a vacation. Okay. Well, don't we all? Anyhow, so I just kind of was like, well, that wasn't helpful. And I continued on my life and stopped going to the gym because I physically couldn't do it. And I was like, maybe I am like burning the candle at both ends. Maybe I'm just doing too much. And it's just, you know, I need to take a step back. So I stopped, and I remember the day that I had the first like really strange thing happen. I was in a store trying on clothes, and when I raised up my arm to take my shirt off, I couldn't breathe. And I was like, whoa, that was really scary. And I thought it was like a fluke thing, and then the next time I raised my arms up, I couldn't breathe again, and I'm like, okay, now I'm not breathing. There's definitely something wrong with me. So I went back to the same urgent care, and I was like, okay, got new symptoms. Not only am I having no energy, but like I'm losing my breath when I raise my arms overhead, and that seems really concerning. And I said, even now, when I lay down in bed to go to sleep, I'm having to sleep with like 3 pillows, because if I lay flat, like there's no air. And I'm like, you gotta know something's wrong. And they're like, okay, we're gonna do a chest x-ray. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. So they do a chest x-ray and say, everything looks great. I don't see anything wrong. And I'm like, but I did have like some noticeable swelling in my neck. And so they said, we're gonna go ahead and do a thyroid scan. And I'm like, okay. So they send me up to Eugene, I get a thyroid scan. I'm waiting and waiting for these results. Nobody's calling me. I finally get a hold of someone after like 10 days, and they're like, oh yeah, your results came back inconclusive, you're fine. I'm like, I'm not fine. Like something is wrong with me, and nobody could figure it out. So we ended up going on that vacation that I was suggested to go on. And during the vacation, I ended up like having all of these, wind. I ended up having all of these lymph nodes in my collarbone area get like so big that like I was kind of embarrassed to wear a tank top. And this was summertime, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like now I have like these golf ball sized lymph nodes like all around my neck. It was so bizarre. So anyhow, I get back from the vacation, and I'm like, hey, I am not gonna stop going to the doctor until they can tell me what is wrong, because this is absurd. So I go back to the doctor. I still don't have a primary care at this time, so I'm just going back to the same urgent care. So I go to the urgent care, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna help you get to the bottom of this. We're gonna test for everything. And I said, great, please do. So they start running all these tests, and I'm in there, and he goes like, I'm not letting you leave until I get the results. Like I'm gonna stat these results, we're gonna get them back for you, and we're gonna figure out what's wrong. And I said, well, what do you think is wrong? And he goes, well, I'm mostly concerned that you might have lymphoma. And at the time, I didn't even know what lymphoma was. I was like, is that a cancer? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think that's what it is, but sure, test me, whatever. At this point, we have no idea what's wrong with me. So I get all this blood work done, like really extensive blood work, and I'm waiting for like literally an hour and a half in his office. And he finally comes in, and he's like, well, thank God it's not lymphoma. And I was like, well, great. I didn't think it was anyways, but now what? And he goes, well, there's a list as long as my arm of all the things you might have wrong with you. So we're just gonna have to start like going one at a time and figuring it out. I'm like, awesome. He goes, but we're gonna start tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm ordering you an MRI, go to the hospital, let's get that done, and let's at least like weigh out what you got going on here. So I said, okay. So next morning, get up early, go to the hospital, get my MRI, head to work. Like I said, I was working at the credit union at the time. I was a loan officer, so I'm at work, sitting at my desk, doing my job. And luckily, at the moment that this occurred, I didn't have somebody with me, like that I was helping. But I'm sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden, my airway stops. And I'm like, oh, I can't breathe. And I'm like waving my arms, and I'm freaking out. Because like when you can't breathe and you're sitting up, you're like, okay, this is really bad. So my boss like puts me in the car, rushes me to the hospital. They take me and get me on oxygen. They're trying to ask me all these questions, which I'm having a hard time answering because I literally can't breathe. And my coworker doesn't know how to answer my questions. They're like, who's your next of kin? Are you married? Do you have family? And so they're trying to find my husband, and this is 19 years ago. So this is not when people were using cell phones a lot. So my husband had the day off, he was golfing. He was not able to be found. So they get a hold of my parents, and they're like, all right, Casey's in the hospital. There's definitely something going on. We think you need to, get her husband, because we're concerned this is serious. And so they end up going to the golf course and had to find my husband on the golf course and be like, you need to come. Casey's in the hospital. So finally they get there. Meanwhile, I'm in the back, and they're like, all right, we need to take you in for an MRI. And I was like, hey, well, I just had that, so go read your MRI. I got that done this morning. And they're like, oh, okay, great. So they go in, and they get the results, and this doctor walks in who, ironically, I went to school with his kids in high school, and so I'm like, I knew this guy. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is you? This is the Casey I'm talking, oh wow. And he's like, well, this isn't good. And I was like, what do you know? And he goes, well, I got your results from your MRI, and I'm 99% sure what you have. And I said, okay, what do I have? And he said, you have lymphoma. And I said, oh my gosh, that's what I don't have. I was literally told that specifically by the doctor last night, that that's the thing I don't have. So I don't know what you guys, nobody can figure this out, but you're wrong. And he's like, okay, listen, I'm gonna order a biopsy, but I'm 99% sure this is what you have. So I said, okay, I will, we'll wait for the biopsy. So he goes, well, I'm gonna go ahead, I can send you home. And I said, listen, I stopped breathing while sitting at a desk today. I don't wanna go home. I have insurance, please check me into the hospital. I'm scared to death right now. I don't wanna go home. So they check me into the hospital, and the very next morning I go in for the biopsy. Get the biopsy done, and they were waiting for the results. In comes in the oncologist, and he says, okay, well, you do have lymphoma. And I'm going, oh no, are you serious? The thing that's crazy, and then what I didn't kind of give you the backstory on, is the one thing that from childhood that I feared the absolute most in my life was the word cancer. So when I heard that diagnosis, it was kind of like everything went silent around me, and I'm like, did you just say what I think you said? Like, I like didn't, I didn't want to receive it. I was like, no way, is this really true? And he said, no, Casey, you definitely have it. And he said, and it's stage 3. He said, so it's in your neck, it's in your chest, and it's in your abdomen. And he said, and at this point, we have to determine if it's in any major organ, because if it is, then you would be stage 4 and we can't even really treat you. And I'm like, I'm 21. Like, I mean, you're at the time in your life where you kind of feel like you don't think about death. You kind of feel invincible. Like, I wasn't thinking about death before this at all. It literally wasn't even crossing my mind. And so to be given and I'm going, okay, but still in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe he's wrong. Because I mean, look at how long I've been going to the doctor and nobody can figure this out. But okay. And he goes, we're starting chemo tomorrow. And I said, excuse me? And he goes, we need to start your chemo tomorrow. And I was like, hey, listen, I get it. You have a biopsy. I have cancer. Why are we starting this this fast? Like I'm still in the hospital right now. You're just going to start me tomorrow? And he goes, yeah, this is very important that you get started right away. And I said, I don't understand, what's the urgency? And he goes, in the cases that I've seen like yours, people don't live a month. And so that was second, jaw-dropping moment, wait, not only do I have cancer, but you're giving me a month to live? It was so overwhelming to get that news. I told him, I said, okay, I want a second opinion. And he's like, all right, you can get a second opinion, that's fine, but we're starting chemo tomorrow. And I'm like, looking at my mom, were you doing this? And she's like, I think we need to do it. So I said, well, I want to go to Oregon Health Science because they're really good. And I feel like I would trust their diagnosis. So can we get that scheduled? So went ahead and got that scheduled. But meanwhile, he's like, all right, going in for first chemo. So I'm like, okay. So I get myself prepared for this first chemo. And he told me, he said, you need to expect it's going to take 3 to 4 hours for this treatment to be done. Have somebody drive you because you will not be able to drive home. And I'm like, okay, that seemed kind of crazy, but okay. So my husband was working, so my mom drove me. So we go in for this treatment, and I blew 3 veins in the first hour and a half. And it was awfully painful, because when a vein bursts and you also have those awful chemo drugs going, it feels like somebody literally lit a match inside your vein and then it just stays there and you're like, oh my gosh. So one vein blows, the next vein, so third vein, my 3 to 4 hour treatment, my first one took 6 hours. So that was a lot more than I expected. The other thing that I didn't expect was I walked into the building, and I wasn't feeling good, but I walked in, I get done with this treatment, and I literally had to be carried to the car because I physically couldn't push myself up out of the chair. And I'm like, what did this stuff do to me? It was overwhelming to have that much energy and everything taken from you. I had never experienced something like that. So I didn't realize how much each treatment consecutively would be different and a new struggle. And I think for people that have had family or themselves that have gone through cancer, it's every day there's a new, what's going to happen today? What symptoms am I going to have pop up today? It can be really scary. So one thing that happened to me during this, because I was facing my biggest fear, was I was, really concerned for my life. Not sure how long I was going to live. And I would say for the first time really considered I might actually not be here in a year or 5 years or however long. I don't know how much time I have left. And so I remember praying and asking God, I said, if you let me live through this, if I survive this, I will spend the rest of my life helping people with their health and anything I possibly can so that somebody else not having this road that I'm walking on right now. Because I knew how scary it was. I knew how hard it was. And this was just the onset, but I thought, I need to do something. So anyhow, I remember praying that prayer. And the other thing that happened that was interesting is, anytime you get a diagnosis, family tells people, they tell friends. I have family all across the United States. My dad has a huge family. So people all over were praying for me, were sending me, I got so many, I have a scrapbook, you guys, it's this big of letters and cards that I got from total strangers being like, hey Casey, I know you don't know me, but I'm praying for you and I hope you get through this. My parents are, your parents or your uncle or whoever is keeping me up to date on this. And I had hundreds of people. So that was very encouraging. One of the families that reached out to my parents was one of my mom's friends, and she was so adamant about getting me on this supplement, like from the get-go. And my mom's like, you know, we're really trying to do what the doctor said. We're really trying to follow the protocol, yada, yada. And she's like, I understand that, but like, you know, you can show her doctor. I know this won't hurt her. Like, I really think this would help her. And it's the stuff called Juice Plus. And listen, if you guys don't want to buy it, I'll buy it for Casey. Like, I'll tell, you know, everything about it. And I'm like, okay. So we show the doctor. My mom thinks it's a good idea. She's like, listen, I'll buy it for you. Let's just try it. Let's see what you think. So I just start taking this stuff, just thinking like, whatever, I'm taking a vitamin, like, hope it helps. But I have cancer, so like, what is it gonna do? So I'm taking this. Well, the one thing that that doctor told me is he said, when you go through chemo, it really suppresses your immune system. And part of that, like, you know, it's killing the good or the bad cells, but it's gonna kill some good cells. So your immune system's gonna be struggling a lot. And he said, because of that, your white blood count naturally is gonna start declining. And he said, so we have this, it's an injection and it's called Neupogen. And he goes, this is what's given to cancer patients. And he goes, typically, you know, we start and it's every 2 weeks and then it's, you know, once a week. And then sometimes he goes, you might not be able to actually receive the chemo that you're scheduled to get because if your white blood count's too low, it's not safe to give it to you. So I was like, okay, well, after my first chemo, he just scheduled me to get the Neupogen shot. So I got the Neupogen shot, I get my second chemo. And the other thing that most of you know about chemo is with the majority of it, you lose your hair. I will say for me, that was one of the hardest times because I don't know, I'm sure it's for everybody, whether you're a boy or a girl. But for me, like, I remember it was after my second chemo, it was about 6 days afterwards, and I was showering and I started washing my hair. And as I'm washing, like clumps of hair are just coming out in my hand. And I was so overwhelmed. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like happening. And I'm so scared to even look in the mirror thinking like I'm gonna have these chunks of bald spots. And I got out of the shower and I just literally dropped to the floor and started crying because I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. And my mom, I was at her house and she could hear me and she's like, Casey, what's going on? Are you okay? And I'm like, my hair is falling out. And so she went ahead and called our family and friends and kind of let them know, the close ones, and let them know what was going on. And that night, we had a head shaving party. And it didn't feel like a party because, you know, I went first and because I had like bald spots. And so they start, you know, shaving and I'd never had a razor against my head. And like, just the feeling of like the hot blade was like a little bit much. And I just sat there and tears were just like running down my face. It was just really hard. But then aside from me, 12 other guys, my brothers, my dad, my cousins stepped in and they all shaved their heads for me. We took a picture and we're like, we're doing this. I got support. I'm not alone. But it was hard, you know. I think it's hard for anybody when you go through that. The other thing I didn't realize was how sick I would get. I really kind of had it easy, I would say, after my first chemo. Like I had no energy, but I didn't really get sick. But after my second one, because I pulled out my journal, I journaled the whole time during my cancer. So I pulled out my journal so I could look at this. And after my second treatment, I was so sick that the smell of anything, like it didn't matter if it was food, it didn't matter if it was perfume, soap, shampoo, like I'd smell it an instant. I'd start throwing up. Like I couldn't tell you how many times we'd get in the car and a smell that came in through like the windows made me sick, and we're pulling off on the side of the freeway and I'm throwing up. And it was awful. And to be sick all the time and then nothing sounded good. Like literally no food appealed to me. There was never a time I'm like, I want to go eat that. Like my mom was like, I'll make anything you want. What do you want? I'll take you anywhere. Like I don't want anything. I want no food. Nothing sounded good. It was just really disgusting. So that was, you know, something I hadn't experienced. But the thing that I realized is prior to all of this, I was afraid of cancer, but I really hadn't realized what so many people went through. And so many people go through this. I mean, it's so sad. Like the statistics are like literally like 1 out of 4 people now in their lifetime get a cancer. And that's way too high. Like that, I mean, to me, that's just like, that's devastating. And more than anything, I want to stop that. And I know that I can't alone do that, but I can do what I can to educate people so that maybe they can prevent it. The thing that was interesting was by my third treatment, I went to get blood work done like I had to before every chemo test my white blood cells. And so my oncologist said, okay, we're going to do this blood test. He goes, but you're not scheduled for chemo until the next day because I need to know if we can or can't do it. So I go in for the blood work and waiting for the call, and they call and they said, oh, your blood work looks great. We can do chemo tomorrow. Okay, cool. So we go in, get my chemo done. Well, this continued for the next, couple of months. And the thing that was really weird was by my 4th month of chemo, my hair starts growing back. And I'm like, this is really strange. Like it was coming in all even, and I'm still like in the thick of my chemo treatment. And so I take off my wig and I show my oncologist, I'm like, look, my hair's growing back. And he's like, that's kind of strange, but I have heard about things like this, but it's gonna fall back out. Like you're doing chemo, we're not doing anything less. Your treatments are actually increasing as we go. Your hair is gonna fall back out. Like, please don't get excited. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that was disappointing. But the thing he was really surprised is as we keep going through these treatments and they're doing my blood work, he's like, it's so strange you don't need another Neupogen shot. Like, I've never seen somebody that doesn't need these because like everybody needs these. Your immune system keeps getting weaker. Well, by the time I'm in my last month of chemo, my hair is long enough that I stopped wearing that wig. It was only like 1.5 inches long, but I was like, hey, I got hair and I am so happy. So I'm, and he's just like, this is so weird. This is not normal. And long story short, I ended up getting all the way through my chemos, never ever needing a Neupogen shot again, which he had never in his history ever seen. He's like, this is just so completely bizarre. So anyhow, I get done with my chemos, and by this time, like, I wouldn't say that I felt like really good, but I felt like way different than I did in the beginning. So I'm like, I think I'm well. I think I've kind of overcome this cancer. I'm pretty sure we've gotten through what was there. And he said, now's the waiting game. We got to wait 3 months and then do this PET scan. And he said, we can't have anything going in your body. We just need to let your body see what it's going to do and if things are going to come back. So I get scheduled for April. So this was in February, or beginning of February. I get scheduled for end of April to get this PET scan up at OHSU. So I go in for a PET scan. And for those of you that don't know what a PET scan is, I had no idea what I was in for. Because I had like, MRIs and CTs and all these things. And so I kind of thought like I knew medical stuff. And then I go in for this PET scan. And they're like, all right, we're going to have you go in this waiting room. And an attendant will be with you soon. And I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting in there. And this guy walks in like a spacesuit. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, full blown, like the head thing, like these big gloves, and he's carrying like this chamber. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie. Like, what is happening right now? He like walks in and he says hi to me or whatever. And he takes this chamber thing and he like unlocks it and like pulls it out. And I'm just like, what's inside of this? Like, I have no idea what's happening next. And then he opens it again, literally 4 times. It's like a nesting doll, but like for this chamber thing. And I'm like, what is coming out of this? And at the bottom is this syringe that he picks up, like this huge, like straight up like a sci-fi movie, you guys. He picks up this syringe and he's like, all right, I'm going to be putting this in your IV. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're in all of this gear and gloves and you're going to shoot that in my vein? Like, is that okay? Like, am I going to die? Like, I was scared to death. I was like, what is this? So anyhow, I get this injection done, and I said, can you tell me what's going on in my body? And he goes, it's radioactive glucose. And I'm like, okay, that sounds scary. And I was like, glucose, isn't that like sugar? And he's like, well, it's a form of sugar. And I was like, well, what does this do? And he goes, well, the radioactive part makes it light up in your body, but the glucose is going to run as fast as it can to cancer cells because that's what feeds cancer, And I was like, what? Like, I mean, you hear like sugar's not good for you, but like, I'm like, wait, it literally is that's going to run to the cancer cells? And so I'm like laying in this machine going like, oh, this is scary. This is so gross. 3 hours later, I get done with it. And get home and everything and waiting for my results. It took almost like 3 days or something to get the results, but I was fully expecting like great results because I'm like, at this point, now 3 months after chemo, like I'm feeling fantastic. Like I feel like I'm myself again. Like I don't have anything that's weird. All of my weird symptoms were gone. And so I was out in my yard that day and I was weeding and I get a phone call and it says it's my oncologist. I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, and he's like, Casey, I need you to come into the office and bring your family. And I'm like, what? Like, oh my gosh, this is not what I was expecting. Like, I thought that you were just gonna say like, hey, you're cancer free, good job. So he's like, can you come in today? And I'm like, okay. So we go in, and I'm just like having no idea what he's gonna tell me. And so I get in there, and my whole family comes, and he goes, well, your scan came back, and not only is there cancer, but it's in new locations. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he's like, so what we know is that it's extremely rare. It's not any like known cancers that we're really familiar with. That's comforting. And we don't really have any set treatment for it, but I have called around, and University of Washington and Stanford School of Medicine is doing experimental treatments on things such as this. So my recommendation is that you go ahead and choose one of those locations. You won't be able to have family with you because you're going to be like in this like chamber that's like, you know, where they like walk in and they have to put on the gap thing and then they can walk into your room. So like never visitors, you're not supposed to. So it's that like really high level ICU type thing. And they're like, you know, this is what, and I just look at him and I said, I'm not doing it. And he's like, what? And I said, I think your test is wrong. And he goes, Casey, like, you know, OHS, you did it. Like, you trusted them. And I'm like, I know, but I think your test is wrong. And he's like, this is not something we can take lightly. And he's looking at my family, like talking to them, like, you guys be reasonable with me because she's not. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, like when I came to you, like I knew something was real bad. I knew I needed help. I feel really good now. I honestly think I'm better. And I just like to volunteer to do something experimental when we don't even have a biopsy, like absolutely not. So I said, either I get a biopsy or there's no chance in me trying anything else that you're wanting me to do. And he's like, okay. And I said, personally, I'd rather you take my scan and send it to somebody else that like specializes in lymphoma and maybe they'll figure it out. And he goes, okay. So he went ahead and he had a colleague that he knew from Stanford. He sent all the information to her. He called her. He's like, I know you work in this clinic that literally their whole lab just does blood cancer diagnostics. So he's like, I figured if anybody could help me get this girl convinced that she needs help, it would be you. And so she takes all the stuff. And so 3 days after that meeting with him in his office, he calls me back and he said, Casey, can you come into my office? Bring your family. Okay. So we go back in and he goes, I got to tell you, girl, he said, I have never he goes, I've been an oncologist for 30 years and I have never lost so much sleep as I have over the last 3 nights because of you not wanting to get treated. He goes, you're one of my youngest patients. And he goes, and like, I know that I want you to have a longer life. And like the fact that you're just saying no right now, really, it upset me. And I'm looking at you like a daughter and like, you're not doing what I'm asking. And I'm like, I'm concerned. And he goes, so, you know, I told this lady, I said, can you, figure this out? He goes, Casey, you're not going to believe what they found out. He goes, when somebody gets chemotherapy, there's a gland in your body that's right here in your chest. It's called your thymus gland. Your thymus gland becomes completely inactive during chemotherapy because the purpose of it is to produce white blood cells, T and B cells. Those are like immune boosters, okay? Chemo just suppresses it. It doesn't kill it, but basically he goes, imagine it like a sponge. If a sponge was like really wet and heavy, like it would be very different than if it was like dried out and left in the sun. He goes, basically during chemo, your thymus gland is this dried out, left in the sun organ that's like not functioning. And he goes, and we know that because it's been proven throughout time, like people don't have functioning thymus glands. He goes, so what we saw on your scan, usually it will only ever pick up cancer because that's what, lights up because it's the fastest cell production. And he said, your thymus gland is actually double its normal size and producing so many white blood cells and T and B cells that like it actually picked up on our scan. He goes, in fact, your body is so healthy that like, he goes, we've never seen, like I've never seen a thymus function like this. He goes, the lady that I sent this to, she and her team had never seen anything like this. He goes, I'm just completely shocked. He goes, because typically post chemo, it takes 6 months for it to start turning back on, but it's really not fully functioning until 12 months post chemo. And we were 3 months post chemo. And so anyhow, I ended up having no cancer. I had very, very healthy, and he was just stretching his head like, I got to figure out like why this is. And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to call that company of those vitamins I'm taking because now I've had my hair grow back. I haven't needed the shots, and now my thymus gland is like rocking and rolling. I don't know what's going on, but like I'm going to call them. So, and I did know at the beginning of taking this, and one of the only reasons why I was okay with it is this company, unlike everything else, has like tons of studies. They're actually the most heavily studied nutritional product in the world. So they have like published studies in all of these medical journals. And so I call them and I'm like, have you guys ever heard of something like this? Have you ever heard of like, and I told them all the different things and they were like, actually, we have. In fact, there's a study going on about thymus gland function and how Juice Plus increases your thymus function. And I'm like, wow. So I did end up sharing that with the doctor. But it was a real journey to go through everything I went through. But that experience is what led me to go, I want to do something. And since I did survive, I held true to my promise. I ended up going to school originally for training. I mean, I did like all the reading and research and stuff about nutrition on my own, but I hadn't formally went to school until like 8 years ago. But 10 years ago, I went in for training. I got certified as a trainer. And very soon after that, I realized that even though I knew a lot of stuff health-wise, people were not as accepting to receive it from me until I had the degree behind my name. So then I went to school for nutrition and I got certified in that. So that has led me to this job, which I've been at now for 10 years. And I would say out of every job I've ever had, it has been the most rewarding because I've been able to help hundreds, if not thousands of people over the last 10 years. And it was really humbling because when I was in the midst of my cancer, you know, when you're in a chemo room, at least the one that I was in, it's a big room with a lot of chairs and there's a lot of other people getting chemo at the same time. I ended up meeting 2 other women that at the time were being treated for lymphoma like I was. Neither of them made it. So the fact that I'm here makes me know that like I'm here for a reason. And so I want to use my life to help others. So moving on from that, we're going to get to your actual healthy habits sheet that I talked about. We're just going to kind of go over these quickly. But over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be making a video on every single one of these principles. And so it'll be like under 5 minutes, so you can just pop on and watch it and know like all the reasons behind it. Because these are kind of generalized that I'm giving you today. So my first H for healthy is hydration with water is crucial. You need to consume half of your body weight in ounces of water per day to stay properly hydrated. So many people do not stay hydrated. And the thing that's really interesting about this, just having 1% less water in your body can cause all kinds of misfires for your cells. It can cause it can make you feel sluggish. It can give you headaches. It can give you all kinds of things. But having the proper water daily, this one fact is awesome. For women, you reduce your risk of breast cancer by 66% just by drinking water. That's huge. Colon cancer across the board, men and women, it reduces by 60% by drinking enough water. So water is very crucial. E is for exercise. Exercise is imperative. We are meant to move and be physically active, and it is one of the best ways to strengthen your brain, body, and immune system. It's also one of the best stress relievers. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of my health things, and I think part of what got me to cancer, other than just not great diet, was the stress that I was under. And constant, frequent stress, it just attacks your cells. And it's kind of like BBs pelting your cells all day long because it causes free radicals. And free radicals damage our cells and they cause, mutations that cause cancers. So exercise is very important. The third one, A, is for autophagy ignition. A lot of people have no idea what this word means. Autophagy is the fancy way of saying detox or cell clean out. So this system does not turn on unless we are in a fasting place. So typically it turns on at hour 12 of your fast. So like if you didn't eat, say like you stopped eating at 7 p.m., by 7 a.m., this is turning on. A good way to consider this is if you were to build a new home, it would be gorgeous and you could move in and it might even be really nice the first week, but if you never cleaned that house, no matter how new it was, it's gonna get gross, the garbage is gonna start piling up, you need to take the trash out, okay? So autophagy is taking out the trash. When they polled Americans, most Americans are eating in 15-hour windows. They don't ever allow this autophagy to turn on. So it's extremely important that we make mental notes that at least a few days a week you're getting to that 13 hours or greater of a fast so that you can get this clean out to happen in your body. L is for light from the sun. It heals inflammation, supports better sleep, increases energy and mood, strengthens bones, prevents cancers, and extends life expectancy. So the sun gets a lot of negative rap. I think a lot of people are like fearful of the sun. And in reality, like we would all die and nothing would even exist if there was no sun. Nothing could grow. We wouldn't live. Like there's a lot of reasons why we need the sun. And I will go into deeper depth on this, but trying to get 15 minutes a day with not sunscreen, just like your bare skin in the sun, is phenomenal for helping your health and boosting all of these things in your immune system. T is toxins to eliminate. This one is really big, you guys, and I would say out of all the things I learned from my cancer, these are absolutely known to cause cancer. There's printed, published studies over and again, yet in America, they can give it to us all day long. We can have it in restaurants, it can be in the foods, it can be in the grocery stores, it can be everywhere. These foods, like trans fats, which are hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils, they're fully banned in all of Europe and Canada. It's illegal for them to even enter the country because they know how toxic and how cancer-causing they are, yet they're in literally 80,000 products in our grocery stores. So reading labels is very important. Try to eliminate those entirely. The next one is high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is a concentrated version of sugar. It is 8 times more potent than sugar, so your body receives it very differently. Artificial sugars, especially ones like sucralose, they wreak absolute havoc in your body. They kill your gut flora, and 80% of your immune system lies in your gut. So if you're eating fake sugars, you're killing your gut flora and you're hurting your immune system all the time. Again, I'll go into deeper detail on that. And then the fourth one is seed oils. This one, I believe, is a link to so many cancers. These are all forms of seed oils: canola, soybean, corn, sunflower, cottonseed, safflower, grapeseed, rice bran, and vegetable oils. All of those oils are causing cancer and hurting your body. There are only 4 kinds of oils that I use in my home ever. And I'll go into detail on this, but I'll tell you today. So number 1, extra virgin olive oil. Number 2, avocado oil for high heat. Number 3, coconut oil. And number 4, full fat butter. Those are the only 4 that I use in my house, period. If you have these other ones, you will want to get rid of them when you see my in-depth talk on why these are so bad. The next H is have a positive outlook. I learned a lot about this during my cancer because when you're going through something that's really difficult, if you're so focused on like how bad things are, it's only going to suppress your immune system more. It's going to take you down. It's really hard on your mental health when you're thinking negative. And you can actually rewire your brain to be negative thinking versus positive thinking. So it's very important that we have a positive outlook. The Y stands for you need 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. I am a nutritionist and I don't do this. Like I have tried really hard. It's so hard. Like from the financial aspect of it, like going and buying this much stuff and then making sure I can use it before it spoils and creating foods with it when I'm busy. Like it's really a hard thing to make happen. But the reason why they came up, and this is like, it's probably even higher than this. This is what our government says we need. If they're saying this, then we know it's like for sure we need this. It's probably more, okay? But it's really hard to do that. So that supplement that I was told about, that Juice Plus, it's actually 20 fruits and vegetables that are juiced, dehydrated, and then put in a capsule for you to consume. It is the easiest way for me to know that myself and my family are getting our servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And I still try really hard to like include that, and you should. As much as possible, eating plant foods are so good for you because those things have antioxidants. And remember how we talked for a second about free radicals? Free radicals cause damage to the body. Oxidation causes damage to the body. The only way that we can reset that is through antioxidants. And those things neutralize free radicals and remove them from our body. And the only place we find antioxidants is in fruits and vegetables. Okay, flip your page. We are on to the habits side. So habits take 59 to 70 days to form. Hear this. You are responsible for your health. Not your doctor, not your parents, not your spouse. stop making excuses and start building healthy habits today. This is one of those things that like I learned right off the bat with my cancer is like when I looked back over the choices that I had made along with all the stress, I'm like, well, no wonder I got that. Like I went from like, you know, living at home with mom and dad and eating like pretty great healthy meals to like, I'm on my own and like, we're going to do boxed foods and canned whatever. And like, we're going to eat anything we want. Sometimes we'd have dessert for dinner, you know. I made a lot of bad choices because I was young and thought, well, I'm not overweight. So like, it's not hurting me, right? That's a huge misperception. A lot of people see someone's stature and go like, oh, that's a healthy person. That's not a healthy. Your weight hardly has anything entirely to do with your internal health. There are things that it will display as, but somebody can be very skinny and be very, very unhealthy and diseased. A stands for air quality. Part of the reason why we have this open is fresh air is so healthy for us. Fresh air cleans your lungs, it strengthens your immune system, it improves your digestion and reduces illness. This grossed me out so bad, you guys. Cancer grows twice as fast in indoor air. Air out your house. And so I know that in the winter it's hard because like, especially if you live in a place that's very cold, like who wants to have their windows open? So the way I do it is at least once a month during the winter months, I know I'm gonna be like leaving the house to go get groceries or do whatever for a set amount of time. I turn my heat off, I open up the windows, I leave. I come back, yeah, I'm cold for an hour, 30 minutes, whatever, get everything turned back on, but it really is good to air out your house and get in fresh air. B is for be accountable. Take before and after pictures and measurements. So if you are in a health journey and you're like, I need to improve my weight, I need to improve my muscle, whatever. If you never take a picture, you're gonna regret it someday because I know nobody likes before pictures. Nobody. I have one in my office. I have shared it, I think, on my YouTube before, but it's the first one, like I didn't want anybody to ever see it. Of course, it's better once you have your after picture to be like, okay, well, this is me now. But if you never take those, it's hard to know because like sometimes you don't see like, and the reason why mine to me is so impactful is I actually, if I only used a scale, I would have quit because you guys, over 5 months of me exercising and training and weightlifting and doing, I never lost a pound. Every time I'd step on that scale, it weighed the exact same and I'm like, what is going on? But you know what? I went from 30% body fat down to 18. And everything fit different. Everything looked different. I knew that things were getting better, but that's why I hate scales. Scales are not a good determination of your health. They're just a factor. They're not an all in all. So that's why the in-body scan is such a cool tool that we use here at the gym. I is for intention. Have a plan in place. Good health will not come overnight. Returning to good health takes time. You did not get to where you are today in 24 hours or in a month or in a year. These things have built up over time, so you can't expect to just immediately be like, okay, well, I'm making healthy changes, so in a week I should feel great. It's gonna take time, and as you're working on that path to health, you're gonna detox, and as you detox, some of those symptoms feel like you have the flu, and you're gonna go, I thought I was being better to myself, why do I feel so yucky? But it's part of the process of getting the toxins out. And having somebody like a coach or a friend or a mentor, somebody that you can reach out to when you are like kind of losing your motivation for whatever you're trying to do for your health, really can be a benefit. The T is for tongue and oral health. So our tongues and our internal mouth health is a window to our inside body. So things like color, shape, and texture can indicate internal issues that you might have going on. Like if you have white in your mouth, it could be oral thrush, which means you have a deep candida infection in your body. And you need to work on getting your body alkaline. So one thing to know is that just like we test a pool to make sure that it's not too acidic and that the water doesn't get all yucky, our body's alkalinity matters. If we have a high level of acid in our bodies, it's the breeding ground for disease to grow. It's actually impossible, if your body is alkaline, for a cancer to ever take hold. It can't. There's nothing for it to feed it. It won't survive. So increasing your alkalinity is huge. And again, how do we do that? It's fruits and vegetables. It's always fruits and vegetables. So that, eat your fruits and vegetables. It really matters. And then lastly, the S is for sleep is key. And I put this last, but it's honestly, I would say, one of the biggest foundations to your health, because if you think about sleep like this, and I already have a YouTube that I did on my channel for sleep. If you think about sleep, it's the foundation, so sleep is the bottom. And imagine a triangle. So if sleep is the base, diet's resting on one side, on the other side is exercise. So sleep is your foundation, diet and exercise will lead you to peak health, okay? So think about that, remember that in your mind. So a couple of things that will help you with your sleep is trying to get in the habit of within the same hour going to bed every day and within the same hour rising every day. It's very, very important. If we're constantly changing our sleep schedule all the time, it's really hard for our body to get in that rhythm, and our circadian rhythm gets thrown off, which then can start making us hungry at weird hours, and everything just seems, kind of out of sorts. So that is all for our healthy habits. Like I said, I will be going over each of these in depth and explaining much more why we want to apply them to our lives. So those will be on my YouTube channel. And I just thank you all so much for coming today. Thank you.